yards out from Solanke and into the back of the net. They couldn't get something out of this, surely. I mean, Galatasaray should be absolutely in the clear, but they've just dropped off for a minute. Maybe a chance, a slim chance for Spurs. Galatasaray 3, Spurs 2.
Izzy, just listening to what we were saying just now about this style, about the style of play. An interesting piece in The Athletic by Michael Cox, who writes specifically about football tactics. He says Amorim's opening weeks at United will involve a large amount of compromise, either in terms of his preferred formation or in terms of fielding square pegs in round holes. Either way, it's clear that this won't be a simple mid-season switch. I mean, you know, how do you switch? How do you switch mid-season? We're 10 games into the Premier League. You know, we're well into the Europa League.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not easy. It takes time. It takes processes. It takes, you know, almost failing to get it right. And there's a lot of those processes in elite sport that you don't just get overnight. You know, we are foolish enough to think that Ruben Amorim's going to come in and play a 3-4-3 because that's what he's done at Sporting. I mean, he might come in with a completely fresh outlook on what he thinks will be the best option for these players, and that might be with a back four, it might be with a back five, who knows. But I think one thing's for certain is there is more to come from a select few of these footballers from Manchester United, and I think if it does end up being a 3-4-3 in the long term, you look at that squad now and they're very centre-back heavy. You know, there's a lot of centre-backs in that team. You include Maguire, Evans, Lindelof, Martinez, De Ligt. And then you need wing-backs. Is Luke Shaw going to be the solution long-term at left wing-back? Is Dalot the solution long-term at right wing-back? There are going to be... I think when we get to January, it'll be very interesting to see if Manchester United recruit. And I think that'll start to give people more of an idea about where he wants to go with this team and what system, because those types of players and the profiles of them will give us a good indication.
Very difficult to come in at this stage of the season, isn't it, really? And as Izzy says, we've got a transfer window coming up in January, but you don't tend to change your squad hugely at that point.
No. And the tendency of late is in the last couple of seasons that not many teams do. It's difficult because you haven't got a pre-season where you can really, you know, build for weeks to get all your messages across. And but I always say I do believe that every manager needs to have give and take about 18 months where you can really judge him where he is and what is his impact on the team, because when he steps in, it's not his players. So it takes about 6 months for them to get used to him and him to the players, and a few transfer windows. And then after 18 minutes, you should see a bit of a style and an identity.
If he's sitting at his desk at Old Trafford, I mean, you can probably imagine what he's going to do. Ruben Amorim walking in, you probably see these corridors in your mind. What does he do when he sits down at that desk for the first time?
Well, I think he is...
Connects to the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, probably. That's a good point, connect to the Wi-Fi. But he wants to get comfortable to his surroundings, and new surroundings as quick as he can. As we know, he's going to bring quite a few number of his staff with him, so that will not be foreign to him. So in that case, he's got a lot of allies with him straight away that he can say, listen, these are my priorities, this is what I want to get right, and let's start and let's do it, you know, game by game, week by week.
Well, we talked a little bit about the defence for United. Let's talk about goals, because in the Premier League they've scored 9 goals in 10 games. They've scored 5 in 3 games in the Europa League, but they've conceded 5 as well. 3 draws so far. Let's hear from Ruud van Nistelrooy, a man who knows what it was like to score goals for for Manchester United. He was asked how they improve in front of goal.
I mean, the most goals are scored in the penalty area, so that's where we want to get our players as much as we can. And but it depends on the games. There's been games where we arrived many times, created many chances, and unfortunately we couldn't convert them all. And that cost us a couple of results. But I think you have to deal with the circumstances. We are one of the teams that's creating the most chances, and it's the conversion. And that's why I said I'm not worried, because we're creating the chances. And with the talent we have, and they're still young, there's lots of potential. I think when results will keep coming, confidence will rise. And that's the key thing in scoring goals, confidence. And I think these guys will have it in him, and hopefully we can carry on.
The way things are going at the moment is you've got Rasmus Højlund, 21. He's scored 18 goals in 53 games at the club so far, only 2 in 10 this season, and only 1 in 15 for Joshua Zirkzee since he joined United in the summer. It was good to have somebody like Ruud van Nistelrooy advising your strikers, but we don't know what's going to happen to him, do we, next?
No, and I mean, scoring a goal is so instinctive. I think that's probably the part of the pitch that doesn't need to be as coached as the other parts. It's how you get the ball into those areas, which I think has been the shortfall of Ten Hag's era, and you could almost argue the era post Sir Alex Ferguson. There hasn't necessarily been a real consistency of method of getting the ball from back to front and getting into those goal-scoring positions. And, you know, people will say it is the hardest part of the game, scoring a goal, but it's probably the part of the game that doesn't need to be as coached, because it's such a feeling-based action. And you list those players: Eli, Garnacho, Højlund, Ahmed, Fernandes, Mount, Zirkzee, Anthony, Rashford, and I'm like, there is so much talent in that group, but we just haven't seen it well together yet enough. We've seen it in patches, and that must be so frustrating for the fans, because they just want to see that consistency of Old Trafford erupting again when the goals come in, and that sort of expectation that gets matched with the performances of the players just on a consistent basis. So it'd be fascinating to see if Ruben Amorim can find that final piece to the jigsaw, if you like.
Would you agree, Izzy, that the players that you just mentioned, I totally agree, they've got bags and bags of talent. But what I a lot of times see, if you look at the front three, I mean, let's say you've got Garnacho and Rashford on the wings, or you've got Anthony and Diallo. The problem with that is they are wingers and they are individualists that like to score themselves. They're not providers. Yeah. And that is one of the problems. That is one of the problems, I think, where they let them down to really carve out really good chances for other people. Bruno Fernandes, he can score a goal, but also as a provider. But I don't think we see enough of that coming from the wide areas.
I totally agree, and I think if you're in that part of the pitch, in the final third, you almost have to get as much satisfaction from providing a goal as you do as scoring a goal. And I think if you ask the likes of Kevin De Bruyne what he'd prefer to do, I actually think he'd prefer to say he would like to assist a goal rather than score one. And I think once you start generating that sort of unselfish mentality within the group, I just don't think you can coach the feeling of providing your teammate with the most perfect assist. I think that is the beauty of football in the final third. It's some players enjoy assisting, some players enjoy scoring. And I look at Højlund, for example. He is a player who I think has got bags of talent and bags of potential, but we just haven't been able to unlock it yet. And the reason why could well be, like you say, Rene, he hasn't had the provision of the consistent balls into the box. And I do think we are, in modern football, we are moving away from the sort of the instinct of getting our wingers getting the ball out of their feet and just wrapping a ball into the box with pace to cause confusion inside the 6-yard box. I think in modern football there's a real tendency now to just retain the ball always in wide areas. And I say that because last weekend when Anthony Gordon in the Premier League provided the goal for Alexander Isak, he didn't even take a touch. He just whipped the ball into the box and it was a goal. And I thought to myself, God, when was the last time we saw that? A player in a wide area just whipping the ball in. Sometimes I think that's what Manchester United need. They need to stop messing around in the final third and just deliver the ball to the goal scorers.
Can I say one name to you, Rene? Victor Gyökeres.
Yeah.
Hat-trick for Sporting Lisbon against City the other evening. 23 goals in 17. The man who's brought him on is Ruben Amorim. Can you see him joining United at some point? Apparently in the summer they get him for around 60-70 million.
Well, I'm sure that Ruben Amorim would be keen to bring him, but funny as you say it, because Højlund has got similar qualities. You know, similar height, similar build, he's got pace, runs in behind, but he's done a fantastic job with Gyökeres, and he could actually have 4 goals the other day because he missed one big opportunity. But he's been growing with the flow of the sporting team. There's so many players that are playing at the top level. And like Ruud van Nistelrooy stated it before, all the goal scorers thrive on confidence. And he's a player high in confidence at the moment.
Izzy, thoughts from you on that before we move on?
About the profile of Højlund?
Well, I mean, it's this. I think there's interesting what about Gyökeres that, you know, Rene says, actually in the end, is he too much like Højlund? Do you need a bit of a point of difference?
Yeah, I think Rene's spot on from what I've seen of Gyökeres. I think he does fit the profile of what Højlund's got, and I don't think Højlund has necessarily set things on fire yet at Old Trafford, but I think he can do. And I think, why would you spend a lot of money on a striker who's got a goal scoring record in Portugal, but you've got one right here at Manchester United who's yet to prove himself. So I wouldn't necessarily say that'll be the immediate, thing that Amorim does. I think he needs to look at what he's got now and see where he can fit other players around that. But yeah, Scandinavian strikers are not bad, eh?
No, let's just hope for his sake that Gyökeres doesn't sign for somebody else in the meantime and come back to Old Trafford and haunt him. Look, we've got lots more build-up to come. René Mullenstein is with us. Izzy Christiansen with Conor McNamara at Old Trafford. Full commentary to come at 8 o'clock, but we've got Europa Conference League action also this evening, kicking off at 8 o'clock. Let's start with Chelsea hosting Armenian side FC Noah. John Southall is at Stamford Bridge.
Yes, good evening. Enzo Maresco has packed away his Premier League 11 and rolls out his Thursday team. As we now expect, it's 11 changes. The most eye-catching name on the team sheet is Tyreek George. The 18-year-old, he's been at Chelsea since under-8s, and he makes his first start for the club tonight. Mark Guiu also starts in what looks like an attacking 4-1-4-1 formation. Now, it's a really big night this for FC Noah and for Armenian football. Amazing story. They were only formed as a club 7 years ago in 2017. New investment came in last year, and in the summer they bought 16 players. No player has been in the club longer than 2 years. It makes Chelsea look sane. And they're called Noah because the Old Testament says Noah's Ark landed on Mount Ararat, which is now just over the border in Turkey. Hence the name Noah. It's just a shame, Ellie, they don't play in a formation 4-2-2-2.
You've got puns, you've got the biblical references as well from John Southall at Stamford Bridge. Elsewhere, Hearts are hosting Heidenheim, all the H's. Kenny Crawford will be watching this one.
Yeah, Ellie, we've got two teams here who can be completely content with their Conference League campaign so far. Hearts and Heidenheim both chasing 3 wins from 3 in the competition and currently perched comfortably in the top quarter of the 36-team table. For Hearts, it's in contrast to their poor Premiership start, which prompted Stephen Naismith's sacking and Neil Critchley's appointment. The former QPR and Blackpool boss is 25 days into the new role. That seems scant when you compare it to the 17 years Frank Schmidt has been in charge of Heidenheim. Game number 607 for him at the same club. That's a German record. Last season was their first ever as a team in the Bundesliga. Hearts make 2 changes in defence. Former Swansea and Hull City player Stephen Kingsley replaces Kai Rolls at centre-back, while 19-year-old Adam Forrester starts at right-back. Heidenheim, who are 12th in the Bundesliga at the moment, only stick with 3 of their starting line-up from their weekend league defeat. Kick-off is 8 o'clock.
There's also one game in the Championship this evening. Burnley travel to take on a West Brom side who've drawn their last 5 league games. Tom Gale's going to be watching this one.
2 expected promotion contenders whose form needs a reboot to keep pace with the automatic spots. Ellie, West Brom haven't won since the 21st of September. Carlos Corberan's side really struggling to score, especially here at home, with their supporters celebrating just 2 goals across 7 games at the Hawthorn so far. A win, though, would see them rejoin the playoff spots. As for Burnley, their new boss, Scott Parker, was nominated for September Manager of the Month, but he's overseen just 1 win from their last 5. Victory tonight, and they leapfrog Leeds back into 3rd.
And another Championship news, Coventry City boss Mark Robbins, the English Football League's longest-serving manager, has been sacked by the club. He leaves Coventry 17th in the table and equal on points with Plymouth in the relegation spots. We'll have more on that story at half-time. Now, Lee Carsley has announced his England squad for the upcoming Nations League games against Greece and Ireland. These will be Carsley's last games in charge before Thomas Tuchel takes over at the start of 2025. We'll have commentary of both games live here on 5 Live, starting with the Greece game next Thursday night. And our senior football reporter Ian Dennis has been speaking to the interim England manager.
Lee, first of all, if we rewind to last month, how much did you know going into that Greece game about Thomas Tuchel?
I think it'd be fair to say that my focus was fully on picking the squad. I think the Greece game, I think people are trying to put 2 and 2 together, and the Greece game not being a great performance, but that was solely my responsibility. I tried something different against Greece. Didn't quite work on the night, but no, it was nothing to do with any outside influence. Like I say, I've been fully respected and left to get on with the role. But
he was offered the contract on the 8th of October, 2 days before the Greece game. Yeah. So how hard was it when you were having to do the media duties, knowing that Thomas Tuchel was waiting in the wings?
No, it weren't difficult at all. It was something that I wasn't aware of in terms of the timelines. I think Mark spoke about it in the press conference in terms of the recruitment process and all the rest of it, something that I wasn't part of. And I was left to get on with the delivering of the camp.
So what do you make of the appointment?
I think it's a good appointment. I think it's a really strong one. I think everyone knows what the remit is in terms of to win a major tournament. I really believe that we've got the players to do that. We've got some not only really strong players that are currently in the squad, but a good pool of players to choose from. So, yeah, excited by the future. Really looking forward to working with him. I know what my role is in terms of the importance of the under-21s. Hopefully, creating a pathway to push players forward, and that's what I'll certainly be doing.
What about the pathway for managers? The fact that the FA have gone overseas?
Yeah. Well, I think it was a case of trying to get the best person for the job. I think we talk about opportunity for players in the Premier League and in the Championship, and I'd put managers and coaches in that same bracket. I think we have to keep pushing ourselves. Ultimately, the best person for the job has to get the job, and hopefully in the future we'll have more managers and coaches that are in the Premier League and Championship.
And what about the future? Could you be an England manager for the future?
Well, I am definitely for the next 2 weeks. Yeah, I think it's definitely you always doubt yourself. It's really easy to be the England manager sat in the house. Well, so far I've shown that I'm capable, as along with the staff, that we can do it. But my focus really is on really short term. Looking too far ahead is not something that's good for me.
And as for the squad, you've got two new faces, Lewis Hall and Taylor Harwood-Bellis, who you know very well.
Yeah, two players that are consistently now playing in the Premier League at a high level. Taylor's had to wait for his chance for a bit longer. Shown that he's consistent, shown that he can be a leader, play week in, week out in potentially the best league in Europe. Lewis has settled in now really well at Newcastle, playing consistently, part of a strong team. Fully deserves his space, and the challenge I've put down to both players, all the players, I include Curtis in that as well, is the challenge is now to stay in the squad.
The other interesting name in the squad is Jack Grealish, because he actually hasn't played for the last 5 games for Manchester City. So why has he been named? Yeah,
so we're fully in contact with the medical staff. We expect Jack to be fit. He's trained the last couple of days, so hopefully he'll come in. We'll assess him. We'll make sure that he's ready to play. If he's not, he won't. But he's a player that I see is really important for not only this camp but the future of England. So it was important that he come with us.
And then finally, looking forward to signing off on a winning note.
I literally can't wait. I said to it after the Finland game, it'd be great if we could play Greece next week, but unfortunately it doesn't work like that with international football. But got the information the other day that the Greece game sold out, Wembley sold out, so looking forward to it.
That was Lee Carsley talking to Ian Dennis, who spent the day at St George's Park, and he's with us now. Hello, Ian.
Hi, Ellie.
Izzy Christiansen played 31 times for England as well, is also with us. Ian, let's just start first of all actually with those two new boys, and I kind of use the word boys advisedly because this is a continuity, isn't it, of Lee Carsley bringing on the players that he knows through the under-21s.
Yes, very much so. We've seen him give debuts to Angel Gomez, Morgan Gibbs-White, Noni Madueke. We've had call-ups, although they're yet to play, Tino Livramento and Curtis Jones. And indeed, regarding Curtis Jones today, because last time he was called up after some withdrawals, he said it's a brilliant achievement. He still, as far as Lee Carsley's concerned, looks at Curtis Jones as a new player. But Lewis Hall, I think, was mentioned last time in dispatches. He's having a fine season for Newcastle United at left back. It's a problem area actually for England because there have been 5 different left backs in the last 6 England games, and Kieran Trippier, who started 8 successive matches in the build-up and including the Euros, is obviously a right back. So you've had Shaw, you've had Colwill, you've had Rico Lewis, Trent Alexander-Arnold, another right back who played last time in Helsinki. So Lewis Hall is a young player but deserves this call-up. And then Taylor Harwood-Bellis of Southampton was probably more of a surprise than Lewis Hall, actually. Captain of the under-21s under Lee Carsley when they won the Euros in 2023. He's somebody who Lee Carsley knows very, very well. Probably might not start, but nevertheless would be a good experience for him moving forwards.
And Ian mentioned Curtis Jones. He's had a really good season so far under Arne Slot at Liverpool. Do you think he could be playing a similar role for England in this camp?
Yeah, I'm so happy you came to me around Curtis Jones, because he's a player I'm very fond of. I think he's underrated, and it's really, really good to see, his involvement in the Liverpool team that's doing so well at the moment, both domestically and in Europe. And anyone who watched their game against Bayer Leverkusen on Tuesday night, his pass that opened up the Bayer Leverkusen tight, compact back three into the path of Diaz was absolutely exquisite, and that is just a mark of what he's capable of doing. And I think probably the next transition for him is, can he do it in an England shirt? Undoubtedly he's got the technical ability, but he just needs those opportunities, and I really, really like the fact that Lee Carsley has given him that.
Yeah, are you a Curtis Jones fan yourself, Ian? I mean, he could have played, couldn't he, in the last round of games, but he pulled out because he was about to become a dad.
Yeah, I saw him in midweek. Played a delightful through ball for Luis Diaz. Again, it's somebody who the one thing about Lee Carsley during his time is that he's done this his own way. He's brought players in who he knows, he trusts, and Curtis Jones is somebody who was part of that success for the under-21s in 2023, and he's having an excellent season for Liverpool. He's had the misfortune in the build-up to that under-21s with some injury problems at Liverpool. I recall him having a freak eye injury at one stage. He's put that behind him, and he's playing very, very well, and has done extremely well for Liverpool of late.
And an interesting situation, Ian, and you asked Lee Carsley about this as well, with Jack Grealish, because he's been injured for Man City for the last 5 games.
Yeah, he actually hasn't played for Manchester City since the 20th of October. And that was a substitute against Wolves, so he's not even been on the bench. I asked Lee Carsley what the issue was. He said it's a slight issue with his groin, but he's been training the last couple of days, so whether he plays or he's involved for Manchester City this weekend. But as far as England are concerned, Lee Carsley was in no doubt, talked about the importance of Jack Grealish. He said not just for this camp but for the future. He's got that infectious character. He's good around the dressing room, and he thinks that he'll be an important player for England. Obviously Thomas Tuchel might have a different thought process altogether when he starts in January, but Lee Carsley says he enjoys playing for England, so we'll wait to see what Manchester City do and whether he's involved with them this weekend.
So we're talking Nations League in these 2 games. Currently second England in their League B group, so they're 3 points behind Greece, who of course won at Wembley last month. I mean, Izzy, how important is it to get back into the top tier of the Nations League?
Yeah, it's really important. Players are playing at such a high level domestically. They need to be doing that if they want to be winning major tournaments. And of course, under Gareth Southgate, England have been so close, but they've not quite got over the line. And I think I always believe in order to get there, you need to be playing against the best possible opposition as regularly as possible to have that sort of big game exposure. So I think it's really important for England to do that, and I really like Lee Carsley's approach in his tenure as interim manager. I really like the way he's invested time and selection in younger players that he's previously worked with, and I just think that for England to then go to the next level, bring that in alongside the fact that Thomas Tuchel is going to be joining, I believe in January, am I right in saying January, in the new year? Whenever he comes in, I think he'll be ready to take over the reins with a real big choice of players to choose from.
OK, thank you very much indeed to Ian. We'll have more from Izzy as well as we build up to kick-off at Old Trafford. This evening, 8 o'clock kick-off, Manchester United
bring that in alongside
against PAOK. Bring you full-time scores from the 5:45 kick-offs shortly as well. But let's concentrate for a moment on Rugby Union. The Autumn Nations Series continues this weekend. Tomorrow night with live commentary of Ireland against New Zealand on 5 Live. We'll head to Dublin in a moment, but first let's hear from the All Blacks captain Scott Barrett on that win at Twickenham last week.
It's a great confidence booster, but underneath all that, we certainly know that we're going to have to be better this week. There was a great buzz after the game, but that game could have easily gone the other way. So a lot of areas we have to improve on. We've addressed that this week, and we just can't wait for the game tomorrow.
And as you mentioned, Ireland are world number 1. Their record here in Dublin recently has been pretty formidable. Does it fire you up? Does it fire an All Blacks team up when you are the slight underdogs for a game?
Oh yeah, I guess what more could you want playing Ireland at home? Full stop.
Rugby Union correspondent Chris Jones joins us from Dublin. I mean, if you said to an Ireland rugby fan that the All Blacks were underdogs for this game a couple of years ago, it's extraordinary, isn't it? But I think you're probably right, even despite the what happened in London last weekend.
I think it's all lends into why this is such a fascinating fixture, Ellie. And it is being billed as a grudge match. It is being billed as revenge for Ireland, because we go back a year or just over a year and Ireland was storming through that Rugby World Cup. They'd won their pool, they'd beaten South Africa, they'd beaten Scotland. There were 30,000 Ireland fans following them through France. This was the moment that Ireland were going to take that next step in the Rugby World Cup and go on and get to a semi-final and beyond. But at the quarter-final stage, that epic showdown with the All Blacks, and I'm convinced that something stirred the All Blacks. And Scott Barrett admitted in another part of the interview today that the fact that Ireland went to New Zealand in the summer of 2022 and won a series in New Zealand that very few teams do, that did fire something up in the All Blacks. And even though New Zealand won that Rugby World Cup quarter-final a year ago, Ireland are still the favourites. They've got an unbelievable record here at the Aviva Stadium. We're just down the road from the stadium in the centre of Dublin. And it's just set up perfectly. And the fact that New Zealand got that win against Twickenham really does mean they come into this fixture with a lot of confidence and a lot of belief, even though it's a tight 6-day turnaround. So really, it couldn't be any better set up for tomorrow night.
You have to think that if Ireland find themselves in the position that England were in last Saturday, with a chance of winning the game with 15 minutes to go, they're not going to make the same mistakes as England, or maybe not.
No, look, I think you're dead right. Ireland have muscle memory now of beating the All Blacks. There are players like Josh van der Flier, Ellie, who have beaten New Zealand 5 times. Their record against New Zealand recently has been ridiculous. To your earlier point, if you'd said to an Ireland fan 10, 15, 20 years ago, where they'd never beaten New Zealand in their history, that A, they would be starting a game against the All Blacks at home as the favourites, and B, they would have had 5 wins against New Zealand in the last 8 years, no one would have believed them. But since that breakthrough Chicago victory in 2016, this has become a brilliant tussle. I don't think it's quite at the levels that South Africa against New Zealand is. That's the best rivalry or closest rivalry in the game of rugby union. But Ireland, New Zealand is not far behind, and they've got 5 wins against the All Blacks in their history, Ireland, and all of them have come since 2016. So you would think that if they are in the position England found themselves in, 8 points ahead, with belief, with momentum, they would shut the game out. But however, whether you rate this New Zealand side or not, whether it's a vintage All Black side, whether it's as good as All Black side of yesteryear, they have got game breakers all over the field. We saw that at Twickenham, so Ireland have to be careful, because this New Zealand team have the ability to strike from anywhere. And as Scott Barrett is getting at, they see Ireland now as a major, major scalp, and winning in Dublin would be a massive motivation for this All Black side.
Well, England smarting probably from that defeat at the Allianz Stadium on Saturday. England, they play Australia next. We'll have commentary of that on 5 Sports Extra. Australia announcing their team, huge call on playing Joseph Suaalii, super talented centre, potentially the greatest cross-coder of all time, or certainly so the Australians are saying. Let's hear from his opposite number, England centre Ollie Lawrence.
I've seen some of his league stuff because I do watch a bit of league, and he's a great player. Switching codes to Union is a challenge in itself, and I think him going out there, he'll just want to kind of enjoy the occasion more than anything. And like I said, it's tough when you come into these environments and you have this outside noise and there's expectation for you to be a certain player or do what you were doing in his case in league, but hopefully he just goes out there and enjoys it, and there's not going to be any mind games from my perspective anywhere or anything like that. It's just a great opportunity to play against great players. I think coaches, analysts are always looking at the way teams are playing and trying to find those like small percentages of how they can win games and how they can get the best out of their players and try and find cracks in the opposition. So him being in where he is, I think they'll definitely be trying to exploit us in a way, just as we're trying to exploit them.
It's going to be a fascinating matchup, that one, isn't it, Chris? And you get the impression that Australia have not had a great deal to be cheerful about rugby-wise recently, but Joseph Suwali is that person.
Yeah, and this is a huge call. This is the $5 million Aussie dollar deal that Australian rugby hope can bring Australian Rugby Union back to the top table. The British and Irish Lions are coming next summer. That might sound a while away, but after this tour, that's the next test match for Joe Schmidt and his Wallaby side. They won 1 game out of 6 in the Rugby Championship. This is Rugby Union in Australia kind of on its knees. So they've gone to Rugby League. They've got this guy in Joseph Suwali out of the Sydney Roosters who is a hot shot, who's a superstar. But as we've seen in this part of the world with the likes of Sam Burgess, there's absolutely no guarantee. How interesting that Joe Schmidt has gone, right, let's not put him on the bench, let's not put him on the wing or at fullback, starting at outside centre in a game at Twickenham. But that just shows how the Wallabies don't have much time to get competitive with the Lions coming next summer. So look, this game has got so much on it. The Wallabies need to start winning. England need to start winning. They've made loads of strides forward, it appears, over the last 12 months or so, but that's 3 defeats in a row against New Zealand, another defeat against France. They need to be turning these close defeats into close victories. So there's pressure on England, and even though people are talking about maybe going and winning well against Australia, I dare say Steve Borthwick would take a victory however it comes, especially with the world champions South Africa lying in wait a week on Saturday. So huge showdown on Saturday at Twickenham before we even talk about Scotland, South Africa, and of course, as we touched upon, this great game in Dublin Friday night as well.
Loads to talk about, Chris. Thank you very much indeed. Latest episode of the Rugby Union Weekly Nations Pod. That's now on BBC Sounds. Right, I promised you final scores in the early kickoffs in the Europa League. Let's start with Olympiacos against Rangers. Gavin Wallace.
Yeah, Olympiacos 1, Rangers 1, and given their struggles domestically, I'm sure, Ellie, most Rangers fans would have taken your hand off for a draw tonight. The truth is that they probably should have won it. Cyril Dessers, 2 very good efforts in the first half, well saved by Zolakis in goals. He should have scored them both, if I'm being brutally honest. A 1v1 where the finish lacked any sort of conviction, and then 1 from 6 yards where he fluffed these lines. But it was the current Conference League champions that scored first. All too easy from a Rangers point of view. Ball over the top for Arab El Kabi to turn inside the 6-yard box on 56, but then less than 10 minutes later, Cyril Dessers was the man slid in by Vlakav Cherny. The Nigerian managed to evade the defence. Sliding in at him and slammed home to give Rangers a great result that now means they've only lost 1 of their last 6. On the road in Europe, on the Europa League. Olympiacos 1, Rangers 1.
And Galatasaray against Tottenham Hotspur. John Akers was watching this.
Yeah, first defeat in the Europa League for Tottenham. Galatasaray 3, Spurs 2. It finished. A night to forget and to remember for Lancashire, the 19-year-old, who scored his first goal for the club to equalise in the 18th minute after a brilliant opener from a goon from 25 yards with a volley. And then he was sent off later in the game with a score at 3-1. Spurs actually played really well with 10 men near the end and could have nicked it, but they were outdone by some brilliant finishing from Osimhen, on loan from Napoli, highly rated, could play in the Premier League eventually, the Nigerian. He was terrific with 2 great goals. Galatasaray could have had way more. Spurs almost nicked it. Galatasaray go top of the league, finished Galatasaray 3, Spurs 2.
So let's turn our attention back then to tonight's kickoff, 8 o'clock kickoff at Old Trafford. Manchester United against PAOK, the Greek champions. Like Manchester United, are winless in this competition this season. This will be the first meeting between the two sides. We can bring in Greek football journalist Kostas Lianos. Good evening to you, Kostas. How are you?
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Well, lovely to talk to you. Tell us first of all about the PAOK manager, Razvan Lucescu. How important has he been over the years to their
Razvan
success?
Lucescu is arguably PAOK's greatest ever manager. To put it into context, PAOK have won 4 league titles throughout their entire history. 2 of them under Razvan Lucescu, one of which was back in 2019, which was a double win, and it saw PAOK winning the league undefeated in the league. During his 2 stints with PAOK, 5 years in total, PAOK have won 2 Greek Cups.